Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about relationships, but this time I'm going to start a little mini series on parent-child relationships. In karmic astrology, we say that it is the incarnating soul who chooses everything about its incarnation, any of the really pressing issues like when, how, which parents, which circumstances. This is something that the incarnating soul is planning very carefully, sometimes not that carefully, sometimes they just boom, come in because they have this pressing need to incarnate. Most of the time, there's some sort of contracts in the in-between lifetime when certain souls say that I want to be your child, or certain souls say that I would like to parent you. There are all kinds of variables, really. And what is important is that the child's soul is there at the conception and kind of governs the cells, because it already knows what sort of physical body it wants, what sort of traits and potentials it is planning for himself or herself to be able to utilize later on. So it's a very conscious choice usually, and even with one-night stands that end up in pregnancies, you can actually detect the child's soul being the conductor. Okay, so it orchestrates the whole event, even if it is quite painful for, I believe, for the mother. And then it pays attention to the development of the fetus, and also the circumstances of delivery. It's always there. It is already there because prior to birth, souls are migrating over from the higher dimensional spaces to the earth plane, and they are waiting to incarnate. And this occurs during the full moon or the new moon. That is when the gates between the dimensions are opening, and that is when they come across, and then they sit, so to speak, they sit on top of the clouds, and they are waiting to be born. Now, they usually try to find the perfect moment for that, and they usually try to find the perfect parents for the incarnation, for the tasks, or the chosen set of experiences that they would like to achieve. And the moment they are born, so let's take a look what happens to the child in their development. I'm going to prepare a second. The second of the series is going to be a video on the sun-moon aspects. You can take a look at any chart, and you can actually tell what the person's perception was about his or her parents. It's not necessarily the truth. Okay, so if you have 3 children, those 3 children will have 3 different placements, sun-moon placements, but this is how they appear in the child's mind. And when I say child, I mean a young child. So the sun-moon reflects the father and the mother only maybe until the age of 6, 7, 8, something like that, after which the sun becomes his or her own ego development, and the moon his or her spiritual essence. And the parental axis is going to take over what is happening to the parents. It's the MCIC axis. So the child is born, and it's always a trauma. Okay, if it's a natural birth, then the fetus needs to struggle through the birth canal. It's always very traumatic. It's narrow, scary, dark. The sound surrounding the birth is always quite scary. The fetus experiences the pain that the mother is going through, and it scares it quite badly. And if it's a cesarean, even if it's a planned cesarean, well, being taken out of the womb brutally and abruptly is just as traumatizing. So it's always a traumatic experience. Okay, and once the baby is born, the incarnating soul is a seventh dimensional light being. It's a light shaft. And it is pushed into this tiny, completely hopeless physical body that doesn't know how to move, doesn't know how to talk. All it can do is, you know, cry, really, and it's really, really difficult. And it will remain so difficult for at least 1 or 2 years before the child can actually start moving around on its own, learns the basics, learns how to climb a stair, how to run, okay, how to express its needs, okay, properly. That takes about two years at least. And those two years are crucial. I know what I'm going to tell now is going to be shocking for most of you, but you can actually bring up a child. You can actually set the rules and the barriers and the borderlines for a child until the age of 2. After that, you need to show examples. And if the examples are different from what you demand from the child, then the whole thing collapses. So please don't wait. Also, it's a good idea to sit down with your spouse and talk about basic rules, basic ideas, how you would like to bring up the child, what are your basic principles, how are you going to use punishment, what sort of punishment is acceptable for you, what sort of rewards are acceptable for you. And you need to come to some sort of conclusion, because if you are far, far away from each other, it's going to be a mess again. The children, when a child is born, that child's life literally depends on his or her relationship with the parents. So the child will need to do everything in its power. And that is why they are such beautiful, kind, funny little creatures that your heart is melting whenever you look at the child, even if it's not yours. I mean, you know, you pass the playground and you look around and you will see that children are brilliant little creatures, and the way they are really looking at everything and joyfully enjoying just the fact that they are existing, that they are there, is always a fun sign, fun sight to see. On the other hand, it's a difficult, hard work. Well, sometimes you are willing to actually, I don't know, toss the little baby into a garbage, so to speak. Sometimes you may even have regrets whether this is what you were planning to do. So there's a fine balance between being very, very tired, hopelessly ignorant. You know, when a child has been crying for 2 hours or 3 hours at night, and you don't know what to do about it, and no matter what you do, it's not satisfying the child. That is really, really brutally problematic. Let's put it this way. Traumatizing for you, of course for the child as well, because think about it. It is unable to express its basic needs. And there comes a point when the child is simply crying because it has been crying for such a long time. It doesn't know how to stop. So anyhow, so the first 2 years are quite crucial. And the more you pay attention, the more you try to assess intelligently and from the heart as well what the child needs and how to cater for its needs, the better off you are. Then come the years of preschool, kindergarten, daycare, and the child slowly learns how to learn, how to study, how to absorb knowledge. And children are like little sponges. My younger granddaughter is now 2.25, so her birthday was in August. Now it's October, so it's just 2 months past, almost 3 months past her second birthday. And it's her why period. So whenever she asks something, the next question is why? And you know, I can relate to the fact that if you are tired of, or if you just you're fed up with all these questions, then you may cut her short. But actually, the babies need to be talked to. So I really quite enjoy when she's asking me these questions, and I'm able to answer her in the way so that she can understand. So that's the period when talking to your child, having intelligent conversations on her level, of course, or his or her level, of course, is getting very important. And then come the first Saturn square. You know, Saturn has a 29.5 year orbit. So the first Saturn to Saturn square comes around 7.25. And this is when the school chores are becoming more relevant and even maybe more difficult. So that is a period when the child realizes that life is full of difficulties as well, full of tasks to complete, full of problems to resolve. And that could be a period when the child becomes either scared or just you know, problematic. And here you need to cater for his or her needs as well, and look for the signs, because that is the first period when the child can close down. And then if it closes down this early, you might not have the ability to open him or her up again. And then comes a very tricky period, which I don't remember child psychiatrists or psychologists actually note. And I may be wrong. Okay, it has been a long time since it was a long time ago, almost 40 years ago, when I last studied psychology at the university, and developmental psychology mainly, but all kinds of other stuff as well. And I don't remember whether or not psychologists are talking about the age, the pre-puberty age, 10 to 12, 10 to 13. That is a very tricky period. The reason why it's tricky, because that is when the mother is finally catching her breath, so to speak. So it's no longer ongoing everyday task. You don't no longer need to sit down by that, you know, to do the homework. By that time, the child learns to study properly, hopefully. The child has friends already. You can let them go visit friends alone. He or she can ride his or her bike. You can allow him to go to the park, so to speak. So you kind of feel like, okay, fine, now I can catch my breath and I no longer need to be there 24/7, right? Wrong. You need to be there even more, because this is a tricky period. This is a child that already is not a child, not a child proper anymore, because the child at this age, 10 to 12, 13, starts to look for adult content, more interesting stuff, not just childish stuff, more like something like a teenager would do. And if you lose the child here, that's the problem. That's going to be a big problem, because if you pay attention, if you talk to the child a lot, if you are willing to spend time with him or her, then you won't lose his confidence. Luckily, sometimes even if you yourself lose confidence, or she loses confidence with you, then maybe your spouse, maybe a grandmother, maybe someone else, an older sibling, can take your role. But the problem comes when the child cannot find it in the immediate family and needs to go elsewhere with her or his problems. And that is a biggie, because you won't have any say in his or her choices. You won't have any say in the matter what is going to interest him or her. What I suggest here around 10 or 12, try to pay attention, very close attention to your child, and also try to have joint experiences, like going for a walk, going to an excursion, or going to an exhibition, riding a bike. Invest in good bikes and ride yourself. It's wonderful. I love riding a bike, or go to swimming lessons together, or dancing lessons together, or I don't know, English lessons, language lessons. Do something that would interest you as well, but among other stuff, I mean, most first and foremost, that is interesting for the child, and spend time with her and him. And because that greatly helps the child enter into puberty, into the teenage difficult years. By 14, 15, you will have the Saturn opposition. That is always a biggie because it is revolt against the whole world, revolt against authority, against the parents. It's a difficult age. You may remember yourself. Your physical body starts doing strange things. Your hormones are raging. You have strange dreams. So it's really difficult, okay? And the child is not yet a grown up, but definitely no longer a child. It may be 2 feet tall, and I don't know, 180 pounds or whatever. So you won't be able to lift him or her anymore and cuddle him anymore. So that's a difficult period, because in essence, in its soul, okay, this person is still a non-adult, let's put it this way. Okay, so that is again tricky. And teenagers are very, very difficult to deal with. They are impertinent, they are lazy, they are smelly, they are loud, they behave totally improperly. So it's very, very difficult to deal with them. And it's the third period when you can actually lose your child for good. Because if you don't spend time to understand the child, he or she will clam up, and that's it. Lately, I had a long talk with one of my clients / students. She has a 17-year-old child. She raises the girl alone, and she was crying because the girl is really nasty to her and accuses her of all kinds of really bad stuff that she says she never did. And what I told her, and what I can tell you in such circumstances, is that try to understand that it's her world, it's her truth, okay? Every child is a universe on its own, okay? And it's not your universe. You might be lucky, the child might let you into his or her universe, and you might get a glimpse of it. But if that didn't happen, then you simply have to accept the fact that whatever she accuses you of happened in her universe. It happened exactly the way she or he tells you in her universe. It came across through her filter, the way she or he explains to you. And instead of fighting against it, instead of being hurt, and believe me, I understand. I was badly hurt by my sons. I was like totally taken aback. How can you say that? I was never like that. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that this is how he or she feels about you or about someone else, about the situation, about the past, and you need to understand. You need to understand why, or at least if you don't, if you can't, at least understand the fact that this is what happened in her world, and for her or him, this is what counts, nothing else. It's very difficult, and it could be very painful, and this teenager stuff can last for years, sometimes even decades, because some of the children simply get stuck in this period and are unable to move forward. and then all kinds of difficult problems emerge. But if you manage to do this portion properly, if you manage to have a good relationship with your children, even through puberty, then you did a great job. And then comes a very interesting period when the child is bringing home someone. Okay, so when a boy brings home the first girlfriend, or vice versa, or nowadays a lot of teenagers think or they believe that they are gay or they are non-binary or whatever that means. So you may have all kinds of problems, really issues that we didn't have. Okay, so it's very difficult to assess how to behave. And then comes a point when the child chooses a spouse, a partner. Now, if the partner comes from a very, very different background, with very different ideas, different parents, different religion even. I know that religion is no longer an issue, you think, but in fact it is, because when I say religion, those are belief systems, and everyone has some sort of belief system. Okay, if you believe that you are a non-binary person, that's your belief system, let's face it, and it's equally yours, like when you are Roman Catholic or Protestant or whatever. So that's why we have a saying in Hungarian that to become good partners, what you need to have is a joint experience, how you relate to your homeland, so your nation, your religion, set of religious or other beliefs, and your family. So family, religion, and homeland, those are the key words. You need to think about those things the same way. For instance, if one is an atheist and the other one is a churchgoer, it's not going to function, of course. If one thinks that family is very important and the other one comes from a very dysfunctional family and left the family at the age of 14, okay, that also is going to produce huge problems. So this is something to think about. But of course, love is blind. And your child can bring home someone that is totally, totally different from what you expect or what you would accept. And you still need to accept his or her choice. And here it becomes very difficult. In my estimate, in my experience, what I see with my clients is that girls tend to bring home their choices, whereas boys usually, more often than not, leave the original family and become a member of the girl's family or the other's family. So that is something I don't understand why it happens, but it most often happens. And it's usually the girl who is able to change the behavior or the set of moral rules or the religious belief or any kind of belief system of the boy, and not vice versa. You see, I don't have any daughters, so I'm not very fortunate about this, but quite interestingly, when my sons had truly good girlfriends, nice girlfriends, I always felt like I had a daughter immediately. So they became like daughters to me. So I in a way, I'm quite lucky because both my daughter-in-laws are kind of like my own daughters. So this is the last period when you can actually lose your child because of the choice he or she makes. And this could actually end into a huge family feud if you don't pay attention, and you may lose even your grandchildren. So I don't know how to proceed when you are facing such a problem. But if you don't want to lose your children, sit down and talk to them. Don't accuse them. Don't tell them what's wrong with them. Try to tell your point in a way that is not hurtful or not offensive, and try to listen to them. It's important. And every time you run into an obstacle or run into a totally not understandable situation, think about this sentence and try to say to yourself as a mantra, it's their world, it's their universe, it's their perception. They are unique. They have their own universe. And this is what came across their own filter. And even if you can't understand it, you need to accept it. And once you are able to accept it, it becomes more understandable. And you don't need to love their choices. You don't need to approve everything they do, but you need to stand by them. And if you can do that, you have won them. And that's the essence of it. Next time, we are going to talk about the sun and the moon. And this was just an introduction. There wasn't too much astrology in it, except for the Saturn return or the Saturn opposition. By the way, the Saturn return closes down the childhood period. So the Saturn return at the age of 29 and a half effectively puts an end to childhood, to the period that I call innocence, and experience is starting. The period of experience or adulthood is starting. And then with the second Saturn return, that is closing down, and you enter into your third period, which is wisdom. Most mothers and fathers don't get to live as long, so you won't be able to experience your child or your children becoming wise old people, because of the age gap. But you can actually adopt the wisdom of older age, and you will behave a lot more differently if you accept it. Thank you for listening, and I will soon come back with the sun and the moon. Bye-bye.